Hello?
Yeah.
He's gonna walk through.
Oh, sorry, John.
Yes, this one into the next. All right. I appreciate the reminders, actually. She was up there for 5 weeks this summer. She's already. Yeah, she didn't want to come back. Yeah.
No,
Oh, they're back in. They're back in
we're all
school.
right. I know. We're live. Yeah. Good evening. I would like to call the August 12th, 2024 New Albany Plain Local Board of Education meeting to order. Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Ms. Fuller. Here. Vice President Newmoth.
Here.
Mr. McClellan.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Kalinowski.
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent Sawyers, are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda?
President Kalinowski, members of the Board of Education, there's an addendum agenda this evening for personnel.
With that addition, may I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Newmoth and Mr. McClellan. Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Vice President Newmoth.
Yes.
Mr. McClellan.
Yes.
Ms. Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
President Kalinowski.
Yes, and the motion carries. Next is an opportunity for public participation, and with no participants this evening, we will move right into discussion items, beginning with board liaison reports. Do we have any reports this evening?
I attended the last Parks meeting, and I don't know if there wasn't any discussion about the field house, but I guess operationally they're finding it much more expensive to hire staff for those new roles. So they engaged a salary consultant to help them work through that. So they have time to do it, but I'm a little surprised.
Are there any other reports this evening?
Levy liaison, we've, after our action at last board meeting, starting discussion, getting community involvement. That'll be coming here the next few weeks.
Great, thank you. Next are superintendent items. Superintendent Sawyers.
President Kalinowski, members of the Board of Education, we have a few things for back to school mode. So we're going to do some updates based upon departments or happenings across the school district. The first day of school officially for students is August 19th. Registration continues across the school campus. Mrs. Will, our registrar, is quite busy. We're doing extended hours. We're offering additional opportunities for family to register. We're on target for probably by mid-September to be around 5,175 students. We did have some withdrawals during the summer. Those always get replaced by the time school starts again. So we anticipate we'll be back somewhere in that neighborhood by all the time the registration occurs across the school campus. There's a staggered start, last names, A through K, and on Monday, August 19th, and L through Z. I had to remember which letter, so I looked up at Scott and Jess. A to K is Monday, August 19th. L through Z is Tuesday, August 20th. With the exception of ELC, everyone then is back to school beginning on Wednesday. There are some exceptions based upon the assessments that take place at the Early Learning Center, both for preschool and for kindergarten, and they should follow the schedule accordingly that was published. Campus is busy. Kids have been back. High school has been in full swing. We've had all the students on campus doing back to school stuff. So it's been nice to see the kids over the course of the last week. Athletic teams are settled for fall sports. All the tryouts are complete. Teams are formed. Practices are underway. 2-a-days are currently happening in football. The weather's been great for that. So the humidity's down this week. So they're really enjoying that compared to what normally happens. I'm going to let Mrs. Lofton do personnel, and then Assistant Superintendent Kramer can do operations across the school campus in preparation for welcoming our students back.
Thanks, Mr. Sawyers. President Kalinowski, members of the board, we welcomed 50 new staff on Friday, 25, ironically, 25 classified and exempt, and 25 teachers, which almost never happens at that equal. We spent a half a day talking about our district culture initiatives, KBR, R Factor, well-being, security and safety on our campus, and then spent another half a day working with Plain Township Fire Department on things like understanding how to work the AEDs, a little bit about just a touch on CPR, and then tourniquet training, ironically also. And then some procedural things for the rest to round up the rest of their day. And today we welcomed back teachers, and they'll be here tomorrow again. Teachers are going to spend a day and a half with us on more academic side of things. Today we talked about teacher evaluation. We talked about performance matters and how to get into that system. Mike Foss did an overview of a lot of our technology components. And it was highlighted today by a nice tour of our campus in beautiful weather by Mr. Sawyers, who loves to talk about our campus and show them around. So that was great. And they love it. And still another half day tomorrow, and then they'll meet with mentors all afternoon. Their mentors all afternoon too, in their buildings, kind of get started on their rooms and the lay of the land for this week and next, and get everything planning. And then we're still working on some food service workers, some aides and bus drivers in our hiring. For the most part, that's what we're down to.
The operations side of things, everything is on track, and our buildings will be ready for our staff here on Wednesday, students on Monday. With our child nutrition services, we had a lot of kitchen renovations this summer. All of those are on track and complete at this point, including new hibachi line at the high school. And all menus have been posted to our website, so families can find that information there. With transportation, all bus routes have been sent out and are live Power School as of this past Friday. And we have an exciting opportunity partnering with the city and fire department with a bus rollover training for our bus drivers this Friday when they return. So we're going to roll the bus. The fire department is going to go through their exercises, and our bus drivers will witness that to understand what happens in that type of safety scenario. So we have that training coming up this week. And then big shout out to all of our custodians, our grounds employees, and all our maintenance employees as they've worked all summer long, partnering with third parties that have come on campus to make sure our buildings are ready to go. If you walk around our campus right now, we are finalizing a few things, but it is in beautiful shape and we're ready to go. We will be ready to go.
So just a couple more things to help Mr. Kramer, because he forgot to say this. In the student or in the bus rollover accident that we're doing for training for bus drivers, we do have the high school student theater program is participating. So Mr. Lemberg has solicited student volunteers to be victims in the accident. So as you might imagine, Mr. Lemberg is truly excited about the dramatic opportunity that this provides for impromptu acting for our students. And we are using fake blood. So it should be very interesting. So we are trying to work with the city. We're doing drone coverage. We're trying to get some media attention because we think it's a great back to school training for all bus drivers. to go through, and we haven't rolled a bus for probably 10 years in the school district. So we're excited that this is happening.
What Superintendent Sawyers hasn't told you, I forgot to tell you that it's an old scrap
I was
bus.
just gonna ask, like, we're rolling a good bus?
No, it's an old
And we haven't
scrap
rolled
bus.
a bus that's a live bus.
No.
We've done this before.
We've only done scrap, something that's basically being cut up and sent to the scrap yard. So this is what the fire department will use for scrap purposes to destroy it before it goes to scrap and never, it has no engine in it or anything. Completely empty. The other piece, just in case any kids would ever see this, Ken, the hibachi line is grades 7 through 12. So he said high school, middle school kids too will have the opportunity to have the hibachi line that is new this year. So we're really excited for the new hibachi line. So if you ever want to come and see it and have lunch, let me know. We'll figure it out. Dr. Mamias and Mr. Emery are going to do curriculum updates for me, please. Dr. Mamias, secondary, Mr. Emery for elementary.
For secondary, the middle school, we have the new allied health course. For our students as an elective, we also have the new robotics course rolling out. We're very excited. We have a new technology teacher who is very excited about the new Spike Prime robots that we're using in the robotics class. We are also doing for this school year, we're doing a science alignment curriculum review, again, looking at the progression 7 through 12. At the high school, we have 2 new Columbus State classes, IT Fundamentals, which is a part of the data center and Intel pathway. We also have a college algebra class. We're also, again, the science curriculum. And then for both 7 through 12, we are working with the Martha Holdings Jennings grant, and we are part of the 3rd cohort to look at student agency. So our teachers will be participating within that cohort and increasing student autonomy within the class. I'll hand it over to Mr. Everett.
Thanks, Dr. It's just a few things. We're really excited, not to steal Greg Taylor's thunder, but looking at preliminary data, going back to kindergarten, for the kids who've been with us in K4, they've been part of our Bridges in Math program. We saw with the preliminary data, 99% of those students passed the 4th grade math exam with almost 70% at the advanced range. And I think that was a driver for our kindergarten staff going into this year. Can they increase rigor in the kindergarten program even more so? For seeing that kind of success. So the Bridges in Math program has released a 3rd edition this past summer. So they've been digging into that. We're going to pool some resources to sort of strengthen the 2nd edition that we've been using for many years, see if we can make our kindergarten program even stronger than it already is. At the primary school, we're really taking a close look at our assessments. We've had a lot of legislation impacting young readers the past few years, and we're just trying to make sure we're as streamlined and coherent as possible to make sure kids are learning as much as they can and by doing assessments as little as they can. So I think we have a good plan in place that Principal Smith will be implementing. Then at the intermediate school, we're very excited to start using a new morphology or word study program with our 4th and 5th graders called 95% word study. And we had many staff come in last week for professional development to get started on this. And I think it's going to be a great supplement and just take really an outstanding literacy program we have the intermediate school make that better too. So those are just a few updates for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mamias. Thank you, Mr. Emery, Mrs. Lofton, and Mr. Kramer. Are there any questions we can answer for back to school?
Just a couple of quick ones. Out of curiosity, all those new classes that we're offering this year at high school, just curious, obviously kids had the opportunity to choose those classes back in spring. Popular classes, are we?
Just, I know there's multiple sections, but I don't know the number. Do you?
I don't know the number off top, but I have one full section of both the ICE fundamentals and the college algebra.
Good. Okay. Good. And then this one is really, I should know this by now since I've got my last student going into their senior year. But for parents who are trying to find Power School or menus or things of that nature, I know we send emails out, but if you're going onto the website, what's the quickest way to find your way to Power School? I know we did a massive reboot of the website, and it's great.
Patrick, do you want to explain? Go to the microphone though. about Back to
So-
School Central and the portals?
Yeah, so Back to School Central, there are portals for each school building, and parents will get the pop-up right on the homepage now that will direct parents right to those areas on the web. The other thing to suggest is the Find It Fast feature, because that was really one of our focuses when we redesigned the site. So you can type anything in there and find it fast. We even built some icons that are already in there waiting for it. So, yep.
Great.
Good.
Thanks.
Any other questions? We'll be ready for Monday. Teachers are all back on Wednesday this week, so work orders will increase dramatically, as they always do, as will Mr. Voss's IT requests, so that will happen as well. But we'll be ready to receive kids on Monday. So we're almost there, like 99%. If I may, President Kalinowski, next on the agenda is House Bill 250 and cell phones. I've invited Dr. Mamias and Mr. Emery to come and speak about this because of the class or the building level impact and the new requirements and how we are already compliant within the school district. So I'm let them come forward to do that. I'm going to get their presentation up on the screen.
President Kalinowski, members of the board, thanks for giving Dr. Mamias and I a few minutes to talk about House Bill 250 and our current practices with cell phone usage in Albany Plainville School District. So, as Superintendent Sawyers brings up the slide deck, House Bill 250 was signed into law by Governor DeWine in the past year and had many elements impacting public school districts in Ohio, one of which was requiring that boards of education in all 611 Ohio school districts have something in policy that addresses the usage of cell phones in public schools. And so for House 250, when the slide appears, you'll see that there's certain requirements that need to be addressed in a board's policy. Now, the governor also dictated the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce to come up with a model policy. Model policy is not required to be adopted in Ohio, but it's from the governor's point of view, what he believes to be best practices in terms of severely restricting cell phone usage K-12. That's not required by law. What's required by law is that the policy emphasize that cell phone use be as limited as possible during academic time, that we need to reduce cell phone distractions in classrooms, and that we can't override what might be in the child's individualized education plan if it's written in that plan that a cell phone is required for that particular child, even if the school board would want to restrict cell phone use for all the other boys and girls. So that's a little bit about House 250. The next slide shows you your current board policy 5136, at least some segments of 5136. So this was passed in 2009, last revised in 2018. And you can see cell phones are considered a personal communications device. And the current policy does allow the use of cell phones or any PCD during certain times of the school day, which you'll see as we go through each building is consistent with what you're going to be seeing. This policy doesn't mean that we can't be more restrictive, but it means there are some allowable uses of cell phones in the New Albany schools for students. So the next slide will show you for grades K through 6, as a leadership team in consultation with Assistant Superintendent Lofton and Superintendent Sawyers, we have not allowed cell phone use during the school day for many years. There was a period in time where we requested cell phones not even be brought to the school campus for elementary children. But you might recall before Director Voss's initiative for one-to-one, we did have a policy where we were bring your own device, where we were trying to encourage for a while as a cost savings measure that boys and girls that did have a device to bring it. Luckily, when we gave every child a cell phone, that wasn't needed anymore. But I think at that point with family. Oh yeah, iPads. We haven't gotten the cell phones yet. But at that point, I think with family plans and the affordability of cell phones, it just got to be so many more elementary students were possessed cell phones than I ever would have anticipated, even 10 to 15 years ago, that we decided that could be a parent choice. And I think for some elementary parents, they like the location tracking elements cell phones, just that reassurance during the day. If they were to use a Find My app as an example, that they would just know that that phone was showing at their child's school. But during the school day, we do expect those to be muted, not turned off, but muted and kept inside the child's backpack, not a distraction. One thing that House Bill 250 does insist upon, though, is that you have progressive discipline. So in our case, depending on the infraction, the sixth grade teacher, for example, just saw someone looking at a book bag and check a text message from their parent about an end of day dismissal. That could just be a reminder to that child that we don't use cell phones during the school day. But if it's someone blatantly showing social media postings during a science class in fourth grade, that progressive discipline could move up to the principal taking possession of the phone and keeping it until the parent picked it up at the end of the day. And even right up to the point where we might have to request that family, the cell phones probably needs to stay at home since we're not seeing the level of responsibility you'd hope for your child in bringing it to campus. So this is a little bit about how we handle things at the ELC, primary school, and intermediate school. Dr. Burmeister talked about middle school and high school.
So for grades 7 and 8 at the middle school, students are not allowed to have phones on them during class time. Students are actually encouraged to keep their phones in their lockers or their book bags, but students aren't allowed to have their bags, so they have to carry their stuff. So phones are supposed to be put away. Students are allowed to have their phones at lunchtime. It's just one of those times where students may have check-in with their families. In communication with Mr. Freeman and Mrs. Mejia, they said very few students are actually on their phones because we have such a large space. They're outside playing basketball, they're outside in the green area. So while it is allowed, we don't have substantial use during that time for the middle school students. The middle school is very clear in their expectations. If a teacher sees a phone on them, a teacher can take the phone. You'll see the first time, the staff member can take it. Students have to pick up the phone in the office. And if it happens more than once, a parent has to physically come in and get the phone. So we don't just release it right back to the student. So those are the expectations at the middle school. At the high school, students are expected not to have their phones out during class. This is actually a phone caddy that we have in, I would probably say 99%, 95% of the classrooms at the high school. Students are expected to come in and put their phone in their particular spot. I actually have teachers that take attendance based upon the phones. So the idea is that while students have their phones on them, they are not being used during class time. It's an expectation that we set at the beginning of the school year to keep those distractions to a minimum. If the student phone is disrupting learning, we will communicate with the student and with the family, and if necessary, progressive discipline will be applied. So again, in a similar circumstance like Mr. Emery spoke about, our students, depending on how they're using the phone, will determine that level of discipline. Communication to our parents and students. Last week on August 6th, we sent a letter out to all of our families telling them about the cell phone policy and what our expectations are for students and that there will be progressive discipline that goes along with the cell phones. In addition, the cell phone policy is in the handbooks, and parents and students are expected to sign off that they've read the handbook in Power School. And then for the middle school and the high school, the middle school holds a assembly at the beginning of the year, and we go over those expectations. And then at the high school, we have during NEST, they do a week or so of expectation videos, and a part of those expectation videos, they go through the expectation that the phones are put away and that they are not to be out and distracted from learning. With that, are there any questions or comments over the cell phone policy and implementation of the building?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Are there districts in Ohio that have banned use of phones at the high school level completely?
Yeah, I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Hannah is one of them. We did last year.
What are the types of problems that we see from student cell phone use? Since it sounds like it's largely before school, after school, during lunch, or in the hallways between classes, that they can,
That they can have their
Yeah.
phones, yes. I was, in terms of the discipline that we've had for it, it ranges from inappropriate pictures, showing inappropriate pictures to sharing inappropriate memes. God, I have to go back and look at all of them, but there are several things that, I mean, they're teenagers. They don't always make the best choices.
sure.
Most of the time it's photos, as Dr. Amaya said, or an inappropriate Snapchat picture or something that's captured as a screenshot. So it's still technically a photo, but it's a photo of a Snapchat or something else that was going on between kids.
Is there an expectation, I was trying to look in the policy quickly, is there an expectation that there's some privacy threshold for students? In other words, where places where phones aren't appropriate, restrooms?
Yeah, I mean, those are some of the expectations that are gone over with, at least in the middle school and the high school, that where they are. In the middle school, they're not even supposed to have their phones with them except for lunch and anyways. But that is something that they discuss in the expectations of high school.
And when necessary, unfortunately, if that occurs, then the progressive discipline is going to be different. So it's not a parent coming to pick up the phone.
Right.
If the phone's been used as a tool in an inappropriate way, it's going to result in other consequences based upon violation of student code of conduct.
What effect do you think it would have on learning if students grades K to 12 were permitted to use their phones, access their phones during the school day?
Say that again.
What effect on the learning environment would there be gained from not letting its students have cell phones at all? Have to be in their lockers, can't access them, can access them before school, bringing them, and after school, so they get it from their locker.
You know, I think we see that a lot in the middle school because they, you know, I can speak from the secondary aspect. At the middle school, it helps just with the students' engagement in class. That's what we try and do at the high school with the expectation that you're putting it in the caddy, that it's not even at your desk. And so I think we've done a good job of helping keep those distractions to a minimum.
Right. So that's actually, I'm glad you differentiated that. So that maximizes engagement in the classroom. You know, one of the things in the belonging committee that we talked about was, you know, things that happen on the bus and in the school, in the hallway between classes. And, you know, we've all noticed, I'm sure, even our own children perhaps, you know, they're walking and reading their phones. So their engagement with their classmates can be pretty limited because of that, right? They're distracted by reading their phones then. I guess I'm just maybe curious, do we have an idea why Gehanna went to the full restriction?
I do not know. Mr. Wilson, if I may, the messaging at the beginning of last school year, I have a daughter, was they would not be using them, but it is at teacher discretion. And I think the reason is at the high school, there are some teachers who use them academically. In addition, I mean, we have the iPads, but there are times I think when we see kids outside, you know, using their phones rather than bringing the iPads out. There are some times when they do allow them in class in Gehanna, even though it's somewhat stated as a no policy. So I think it helps to have them in the classrooms for those teachers who want to choose to use them for a specific purpose.
What would have to happen for us to go to a policy that we fully restrict the use of the phones? So they can't use them during the day, can't have them out during the day.
The Board of Education would have to modify the existing policy as it currently is written for the board.
But in terms of the impetus for that, what would we be looking for as a sign that the policy needs to change?
If they're a complete disruption, distraction to the academic learning environment on a daily basis. So we can have that conversation with classroom teachers about our current practice and go through a review process, but that has not come up in any conversations recently that I'm aware of. through the building committees, because we have teacher committees that meet with the administration in each building. And to the best of my knowledge, that's not on their agenda. I haven't seen that.
Sure. I mean, I think our policy is reasonable because it assumes a level of maturity for the kids in grades 7 to 8. It's not appropriate for kids younger than that, and particularly in high school, right? They should be accountable for their actions. A couple of parents did contact me and ask why we weren't just going to an outright ban. And I think that there's a feeling among parents that it would create a better, I'll say it like mental well-being, mental health for students if they were not subject to concern about appearing on someone's phone or photos being taken of them, or and where cell phones were non-existent when I was in high school, right? But there are a lot of distractions and opportunities for that's a tool. It's a communication tool, right? And it could end up communicating things to other students that we don't want it to. And hopefully we become aware of most of those things, but we're not going to know everything.
So, Mr. Wilson, I would just respond that there's acceptable use policy that's in place within the school district for the acceptable use of technology. And part of it is our responsibility to teach kids how to use it responsibly and acceptably within the school-based environment. To your point about the parent, I would tell you any parent has the right to keep your child's phone at home. They don't have to bring it to school. You're choosing for them to bring it to school. So I know we have provisions in place within the school district, but a parent still retains their right every single day to say, leave your phone on the counter, have a nice day at school. So it doesn't have to come to school, but we have procedures in place if it does come to school to prevent its use so that it's appropriate and not a distraction in the academic learning environment. I think your point's well taken in relationship to choices that kids will make. I will tell you some of the photos we see are from transportation. They could be from an athletic event when the kids are coming back and a kid falls asleep on the bus and they take a picture because he or she looks goofy sleeping. But to that kid, to your point on social media, if that does get posted, they may not be proud of that picture. So why did the kid choose to take that picture? It becomes the learning opportunity. So I'll be honest and tell you, it creates work. But at the same time, we believe there's still responsibility through acceptable use that has to be taught to kids, not just for cell phones, but iPhones, or the iPads, the use of computers, the use of the network and internet, everything that we do on acceptable use. It's part of the total package, because the reality is when you ask a kid, that phone is like an appendage to their body. That's how they perceive it. I don't disagree. When we all went to school, we didn't have them, but you ask that kid today, I will tell you the majority of students in the school district, particularly at the secondary level, have some communication device that comes to school. But we can look into it.
I mean, I think the policy is reasonable. I just, if the ultimate solution is just no phones at all, then there's.
But then we're going to police no phones at all. So I will tell you, then we will discipline differently for a violation because it's insubordination if you continue to bring your phone to school when you're not supposed to. And then we're going to have the parent conversations that say, for safety purposes, I want my kid to have a phone at school. Your policy is ridiculous. I want a phone at school. So what else could you have done to permit my kid to have a phone at school with whatever regulations you have in place for procedures? So I don't know, and we haven't had this extensive conversations with classroom teachers, and we can, but that the current policy and practice that we have in the school district is not working because it's not something we hear about every day. If it wasn't working, it would be at the top of the list because they're not shy telling us what's not working. So I don't know that. Mr. Newman.
I'm just curious on the, as I read through the K6 and 7, 8, it says not allowed. When we get to high school, it says the expectation is, you mentioned some educators are using that as attendance, but what's functioning on the ground? I mean, is it enforced? Is it an expectation, but as long as you're not disruptive? How does that actually operate in practice with the phone caddy?
I would say it's part of the teacher's routines, teaching them at the beginning of the school year to put the phones there. As teachers that are doing that consistently, they don't see any problems with the phones in the classroom. Not all things are, I mean, teachers have their discretion. We put the phone caddies in there, whether they can choose to use them or just have them keep them in their bag. We did talk about there is a routine, so if every class has a place to put the phone, then a kid, that's just a routine of moving into that classroom. So we are resetting those boundaries and communicating that with all of our teachers this week as well.
But it is discretionary, is what I heard.
But I would tell you,
We're
when
making
we
it
walk
clear.
around, you look in classrooms, the majority of the classrooms, when you walk into the room, you see the phone caddy, it's filled with phones. So I would tell you the majority of the classroom teachers at the high school level, to your question, are actually using the phone caddies.
Just one other question for clarification. So between classes, at lunch, can they use phones in study center? No. Okay.
So they're not supposed to. Like I said, at the middle school, those phones aren't even supposed to be in the classrooms, they're supposed to be in their lockers. At the high school, they can carry them on them, but not when they're in their class.
So they can't sit there in study center and be on their phone.
That's our expectation, yes.
That's good.
And a reminder, we do have, they have devices, school devices as well that they're able to use. I appreciate the perspective, Mark, that people have talked with you about. And you know, it's definitely age appropriate. And seems like we have a pretty good stagger on that. It seems to me, and I think we're taking the right approach here, which is using it as an opportunity to teach responsibility and accountability. And yes, you're right, there's some extra work that comes with that sometimes because they are kids and there's discipline that's needed at times. But it just, I think we have an appropriate kind of middle of the road here, which is, you know, the acceptable use, learning the acceptable use of these devices is a good thing. And frankly, and I will put myself in this group, we might need an acceptable use policy for parents too. We all need to be thoughtful about how much we're on our phones. You know, this is a time suck, and it can be, you know, I think it's a good opportunity for us to teach our kids as opposed to just banning it outright. One thing about the policy is currently we do say that the devices should be put away and powered off completely. But we're not really doing that. I'm just wondering if, not to go too far the other direction, but I'm wondering if we should actually adjust our policy to make sure that that's not in there. Because I don't think we're asking people to actually turn these things off. We're just putting it in the caddy. And then all you'd have is kids walking between class, turning it on, powering it off. It's a little thing, but.
In the timeline for House Bill 250, the requirements is July 1st of 2025. So you do have time as Board of Education to stay right where you're at or make those sort of revisions with lots of time before the 25-26 school year.
We'll add that to the list for review.
Thank you.
Any other questions about cell phones?
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Next is a campus master plan update, Superintendent Sawyers.
Lag in technology this evening. So Ms. Jenkins, higher again. Board of Education members, I want to provide you an update since our last Board of Education meeting when you processed the resolution to proceed for the November 5th, 2024 bond issue. To summarize the work that Ms. Jenkins, Mrs. Lofton, Mr. Kramer, and I dominantly have been doing since your action to proceed. So we have ongoing meetings with the architects to discuss draft timelines. I've seen the second version of those timelines, both for phase 1 and phase 2's projects. I anticipate that probably before the end of the month, we'll have some finality to what that potentially looks like, to at least give you some initial estimates of what the timeline will look like upon the successful passage of the bond issue on November 5th. So that's a coming attraction. We've worked with the architect to go through the budget sheets that are required for construction council. So Ms. Jenkins and I have met with Matt Sagoni from Squires Sanders Boggs He is the construction counsel that we have used in the past within the school district and intend to use again for this project. So we've had our preliminary meetings to start the conversations that will result in the contract for architectural and engineering contract terms. So we've met with Mr. Sagoni. He's working on the draft of that contract, and then we'll start those negotiations, my word, with Shore Architects and his engineering team to basically come up with a contract that eventually will come to the Board of Education for approval through Construction Council. We met with the coordinator of transportation services, our mechanics, and our site supervisor with Ms. Jenkins, myself, Mrs. Lofton, and Mr. Kramer to go through the preliminary site design for the new transportation center. So we went through the schematics, talked to the mechanics to understand if it met what they were hoping it would meet for future needs of the school district in relationship to transportation services, the mechanical base, specifically what's incorporated into the building as we continue to grow as a community to service more buses in the fleet and to get us off of Johnstown Road. We've had conversations with NACO, so I'm happy to confirm that the land donation for the new transportation center has been confirmed. We're in the process of follow-up conversations with Construction Council on the legalese of what will be required for the transfer of that land, specifically that will allow us to build a transportation center. We're having a couple other conversations related to other elements of that land with the Construction Council, and I'll have more about that most likely at the end of the month. There's ongoing conversations still with the City of New Albany and the New Albany Company regarding the land donation for the relocation of baseball and softball. So as you will recall, in our plan with the construction of the new school to house all-day kindergarten, first and second grade, it will displace baseball and softball. Those fields will be relocated. The City of New Albany will be a partner in that, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but the New Albany Company has agreed to also donate that land. So tonight we will publicly confirm the confirmation of that donation. We are receiving 15 acres of land that will be donated by the New Albany Company and financial support from the City of New Albany for the construction of new baseball and softball fields in Ganton Park. Ganton Park is behind the fire station. So the fields, as they're currently proposed in conversations with NACO, will be across the street from the announcement last Tuesday of the new home of Nationwide Children's Hospital. So Nationwide Children's Hospital was announced at the City Council meeting last Tuesday. We will be in the park space directly across the street from that in Ganton Park. All that is presumptive on the successful passage of the bond issue, but we are continuing to move forward with all the paperwork, legalese, attorneys at all, so that is ready to rock and roll when we are successful on November 5th. The appraisal has been completed for the current transportation center. Ms. Jenkins took care of this for us for the City of New Albany. We are in conversations with the City of New Albany to take possession of that land, specifically as parkland, as part of a bigger project that they're doing, again, for all the park spaces and green spaces within the City of New Albany. So those conversations are continuing, and we're doing quite well. Lastly, the next steps. We are working with Construction Council. Again, it's Matt Sagoni. We have some elements that will be coming out in short order. The first is the draft of the architectural and engineering contract work specifically for all of the construction that we have proposed in the bond issues, or in the bond issue, both for phase 1 and phase 2. The draft timelines for the construction manager at risk selection process. So we have started those conversations as of last Friday with bond counsel to start the CMR work to go to market. So we will have a draft RFQ that will go out for publication purposes for the construction manager at risk. And then thereafter, we will actually issue the draft of the RFP. The request for proposal, request for questions is the RFQ, request for proposal is the RFP. Excuse me, request for qualifications. They also submit questions, but it's their qualifications. And then from the RFQs, we will actually do the RFP process for the request for proposals to actually identify who the construction manager at risk will be based upon that entire selection process that will be put in place in cooperation with bond counsel. Lastly, we've scheduled soil borings at the proposed locations of the field or the land that is being donated by NACO to the school district for the transportation center and the baseball and softball fields. So there's some pre-engineering work that needs to get done for confirmation purposes. So Tony Shore is working with the site engineers, both civil in this case, to schedule the soil borings that are necessary for confirmation of the land for its intended use. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Michael, could you explain the definition of the construction manager at risk?
So the construction manager at risk is basically, we will pick who's the company that's going to construct the building. And then they go through a process and they'll bid that out for us. And then they basically say, here's how much we are saying. It's called a gross maximum price. And they'll say, this is how much we're going to build this for. And unless there are major change orders, that's where you guarantee the price that you're going to have. The benefit of having a construction manager at risk is that the district is paying that construction manager for all of the trades. We don't have to pay every different trade that's out there, and then they're managing the process.
So it's not that there's necessarily two parties, the company building the project and then a construction manager. The rest of those roles are the same.
Just, and I know we're still working through the legalese of everything. But just to remind folks, is there a general dollar amount for the value of the property that's being donated to us by NACO?
We're waiting on the appraisal, so we don't have that yet. So that's something that's outstanding. So as soon as we get that information, I'll be happy to share it, but I don't have it confirmed. We have a ballpark number that's been offered, but we need confirmation.
Right. And then regarding the support from the city for the relocation and construction of the baseball fields, that was in our budget as, was that 12 million, somewhere in that neighborhood?
Approximately.
0.5. Right.
Yes.
We're still working through that process as well because of all the legal requirements that have to be fulfilled.
Right. But I think it's appropriate to just remind folks that you're talking about significant multi-million-dollar donations, support to our school district by NACO and the city. With those, it's put us in the position to be able to do what we're doing with the levy ask, to keep it within a certain dollar amount that is going to be, in some cases, a net tax decrease for some of our residents and a slight tax for some. But I just wanted to remind everyone of the partnership here that's happening. Should all of this come to pass with support from the district, but I think we are in a really unique and great situation here, and it's thanks to the partners that we have in the community.
We hope to have all that information worked out or next steps associated to the process to continue to update you at the next board meeting. But we are working on it. We have council involved, so we are working through the process, and it is a process. But you're right, there's a lot of collaboration that's actually benefiting the school district based on the efforts currently of NACO and the city. And we're having other collaboration and partnership conversations that the attorneys are looking into that we should hopefully have an update on at the next board meeting.
All right, thank you. Now may I have a motion and a second for treasurer's item A, please?
So
moved.
second.
Ms. Fuller and Mr. McClellan, Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you. I have both June and July on this agenda because it takes us a minute to close out the fiscal year, which ends June 30th. So we didn't have them for the board meeting in July because that one's pretty early. So where we ended the fiscal year in June, again, none of this is a surprise. We talked about it over several months at the end of the fiscal year, but revenue was $2.7 million in total over what I had anticipated, or 3.5%. And after our transfer to permanent improvement, our expenses were almost $2.5 million under where we had projected to be. So overall, ending better than what we had expected to end. That will have a positive impact on the 5-year forecast, which will be coming up in November timeframe. And then July monthly financials, it's the first month of the fiscal year. Everything is pretty much on plan. Nothing out of the ordinary there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Jenkins, is there a publicly available chart of accounts that would tie into the different reporting lines that are included?
It depends on how detailed you want it to be. We don't have like every budget line. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, someone asked me if I could explain everything that was included in a number on this financial statement. And I said, no, I couldn't. And I think it's more, they want to see what the detail is without necessarily having to see general ledger transactions. They just like to see what the elements comprise these different items on their
You could
financials.
look at the 5-year forecast and the notes to the 5-year forecast. I think that gives you a good general idea of what's included and what makes up each of these lines. So like when you're looking at personal services, you can see in the 5-year forecast and the notes, how much is general salaries, what's extra time, what's overtime, those things. If they want something more detailed than that, they would just have to reach out and I can send them the actual budget documents, but those are really detailed in a lot of lines.
Sure. I think what they were envisioning was something just more, not necessarily that had numbers, but just the categories of expenses that made up the different items.
They look at the 5-year forecast notes, they'll see that.
Okay, thanks.
And those are on our website.
Right.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Ms. Fuller? Yes. Mr. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Vice President Newmaw?
Yes.
President Kalinowski?
Yes, and the motion carries. Now may I have a motion and a second for Superintendent item A, please?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Newmoff and Mr. Wilson, Superintendent Sawyers.
General business.
Oh, A and B, please.
So moved. Second?
Mr. Newmoff and Mr. Wilson, Superintendent Sawyers.
Thank you, President Kalinowski. Members of the board, letter A for personnel, standard employee action items pursuant to the terms and conditions of employment related to certified, classified, and exempt employees within the school district. And then on the addendum agenda, it also includes an administrative role. So contractually, the terms and conditions are dictated through the negotiated agreements that we have both with FLE and with OPSI. We have fulfilled the majority of the hiring. We had another one late this afternoon. So there still is a few open positions on the classified staff side in the school district, dominantly for aides within the cafeteria services to help kids during lunch. But we hope to have those filled yet before Thursday arrives. And for sure, if at all possible, by next Monday when the kids come back. There are some resignations, so people have made life decisions to change positions, transfers, everything that happens in life. So we're accepting those resignations this evening. The stipends, the hiring of supplemental contract holders pursuant to the terms and conditions of the plea agreement, and our volunteer coaches to fill the remaining fall positions that were not board approved last month. New teacher orientations dictated by the plea contract, and then again, the personnel dominantly that we're hiring for the 2024-25 school year. On the addendum, I'm going to call your attention to one thing, the approval of this morning. We recommend tonight for hire Cody Wolf as the new coordinator of custodial maintenance and grounds. He had his final interview with us this morning, and I bring him forward this evening. For hire, his effective date would be tomorrow. He is currently employed by the school district as a ground maintenance worker. So this is a promotion for him into an administrative role to take over custodial grounds and maintenance services in the school district under the supervision of Mr. Kramer in operations. So we're excited that Cody has been selected and he is on the addendum agenda with a few other people that we're hiring for the 2024-25 school year as well. Letter B this evening for general business. Call your attention to the bus routes. So annually we do approve bus routes for the school district. So this is just the list of the streets that make up each route. There's no details, no student information. That's all not public. We don't advertise that. It does not tell you where the bus stops are. We also don't advertise that for safety purposes. I am recommending this evening that children in grades K through 5 become accessible for student transportation less than 2 miles from school. So based upon the current fleet, the current number of students that are riding, and our capacity, we are confident that we can continue to provide services for elementary age students in grades K through 5, which you have to take board action on because you're overriding board policy. It's on a year-by-year basis to determine if we have capacity on the fleet. Based upon the routes that have been developed by Mrs. Honkers, Coordinator of Transportation Services, with Mr. Kramer as the assistant suit, we are able to do that again this year, and we're recommending that this evening in the bus routes. I can answer any other questions you may have.
So K through 5.
K through 5, less than 2 miles, will be eligible for bus services. The fleet does not have capacity in grades 6 through 12.
Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Vice President Newmaw?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller? Mr. McClellan?
Yes.
President Kalinowski?
Yes, and the motion passes. Now may I have a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session as permitted by section 121.22G4 of the Ohio Revised Code for consideration of the appointment, employment, promotion, evaluation, or compensation of a public employee.
Public employees.
Public employee.
So moved. Second.
Mr. McClellan and Mr. Wilson. Ms. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Mr. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller? Vice President Newmaw?
Yes.
President Kalinowski?
Yes, and the motion passes. We're adjourned into executive session and we will not take action in this session.
Can
Thank you.
the key? You open food service for them. I am. Oh my God.